Willow Creek Springs presents Healthy Living with your host, Joe Grumbine.
Well, hello and welcome to the Healthy Living Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Grumbine, and I've got a very special guest today. His name is Rob Carroll, and Rob came to me from an interview I did with Scott Lackey and his book, and the two of them have a lot in common. Rob and I spent some time talking about his coaching business and the work that he does, and we seem like we have a lot in common, the way we look at the world and life. And we were just talking before the interview, and Rob, your words were, there's a lot of chatter going on, and a lot of distractions happening right now everywhere you look, and maybe it's time to have a good deep conversation. So welcome to the show. I'm looking forward to this.
That's good. Thank you, Joe. I really appreciate your time today. And I've been looking forward to, like you said, our conversation today. We mentioned together, right? There's a lot of chatter. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of people talking today.
Right.
I have a feeling that your audience, and I know my clients, are hungry for a deeper conversation. So thank you for making this a conversation between you and I. And I'm looking forward to it.
Agreed. Yeah, this podcast is kind of a labor of love. We talked a little bit about, my health experience and all this crazy stuff, but there's a lot of people out there of all ages that are seeking to get better, to be healthy. And we were talking about it, mind, body, spirit, emotion, all of those elements of the human being have to be in some kind of harmony for there to be health. And so we talk about all these different little points of view. And you came to me from a friend. I think you know him better than I do, but Scott had just recently done an interview, and his book, one of the few people I went out and bought his book, and I've been reading it, and it's a very interesting book. But he recommended you to talk to me. We've been talking a little bit. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? You have quite an interesting story, and I'd like to hear a little bit about it.
Sure. Thanks, Joe. And I'm happy to share it. So I would call myself an SME, or a subject matter expert. That's where my career started. So I've been a continuous improvement manufacturing specialist for 42 years. And so with that discipline, right, it's an engineering background, mechanical, electrical engineering. So I've worked in manufacturing basically all my career, through plastics, aluminum, circuit breakers, aerospace, food and beverage. I've had quite a diverse opportunity throughout my career. So when you think about going into manufacturing environments with a mindset of solving problems, it took me a lot of years, Joe, to understand. I know my gifts.
Right.
I understand my passions, but I struggled with, how do I connect my gifts and passions to a purpose?
Okay.
Right. So I knew my ultimate purpose was to elevate others, but I struggled for a lot of years, Joe, to understand, well, how does this professional singer, so I studied under a New York Metropolitan Opera retiree who taught me how to support and breathing and projection. And so I was amateur and professional singer for a while. So how does this engineer? Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's a broad spectrum. I find that many guests have strengths that seem very unrelated, and yet as you look into it, sometimes you find that they kind of support each other a little bit.
Sure. So I recently wrote a podcast on my website that I host on my a blog.
Okay.
On my website. And I have 3 different pages for leadership development. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, Joe.
Sure.
But one of those was essentially the sound, the system, and the stage.
Okay.
So the system spoke to the continuous improvement methodology that I'll use a term that I preach to our clients, right? Every process has a methodology and a system to it. And if you apply that methodology, you can guide the client through problem solving. And I've become a specialist in that. The stage comes from my singing experience.
Okay.
And you're right. You would think, so my mind, where I was going earlier, is what does this engineer, this eclectic mix of gifts and passions, how does all of that mix together for a purpose, right? So the stage came from my singing and my love for, I sang everything from memory. So I
Right.
memorized all the lyrics, all the music, so that I could connect with the audience. Because I realized through music that if you lose eye contact with the audience, you lose that connection. And if you lose that connection, you lose the relationship. And so the influence of the music is tainted or it's weakened by the fact that you haven't connected with your audience. So
Interesting.
for a long time, I didn't realize that. And that was building in my amateur and professional performance from a music standpoint.
All right.
So then, as part of an engineer in one of those companies that I was working with, I decided to have a side business full time, along with a full time engineering, right? Doing home theater and audio
Oh, interesting.
installation, design and installation. So that's where the sound from that blog came in, right? So I'm a very passionate and convicted about ultimate surround sound, home theater experience, and music.
Nice.
So I actually developed a business to install elaborate home theaters and house-wide audio systems with clients. So during all of those years, probably from 1993 to 2010, Joe, I struggled with how does this eclectic mix of this singer, home theater designer and installer, and this engineer, how does all of that matter, right?
Okay.
And it wasn't until I realized that when I help people go home with problems solved and they can leave feeling better about their job than when they came in the morning, I'm serving them. So that helped me realize that, hey, Rob, you can exploit your gifts in the service of others. And that's the magic, Joe, from your business.
I
That's the
do.
magic behind any business. How can I take my unique gifts and exploit those to fill a need, to serve others with? So, out of that premise or that foundation, I went into consulting for the past 12 years, actually
Okay.
specializing in that same continuous improvement world with various companies traveling all over the world and the country, mostly North America, but I've been out of the country as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been invited to, with all these 30 some years of experience to that point, how can you take your gray hair and your experience, Rob, and help these various companies,
Right.
with lean and Six Sigma methodologies for continuous improvement? So that's kind of in a nutshell. I know that was a little bit windy, Joe. Maybe that was more than you bargained
No,
for,
no,
but
no. That's a lot. I got a lot of questions. So,
that's
I,
kind of the backdrop to my
yeah.
history. So fire away.
So, problem solving is something that seems to be lacking in today's culture. People like to complain about problems. They like to point problems out. They like to blame people for problems, but I don't see a lot of problem solving as mainstream. People out there, it seemed like when I was a kid, people solved problems. Everybody knew how to fix things. Everybody's dad was a backyard mechanic. Everybody, you didn't just replace things, you tinkered with them and you made them work. I think relationships tended to last longer. People worked on them. They didn't just throw them away. We have these disposable relationships anymore. You don't like somebody, you just stop talking to them, and people walk away. And I'm like, what the heck? It, it seems like in the past, I grew up in the '70s, and things were very, very different at that time. But they were a lot more personally connected. We didn't have these little boxes that we stared at all day long. You wanted to talk to somebody, you went over their house and talked to them. If you had a beef with somebody, maybe you got in a little scrap and then you dusted each other off and went off and grabbed a soda. I mean, you interacted with people and you solved problems. I don't see that so much today. So, and yet I've always been considered myself a problem solver. An entrepreneur, and maybe not nearly as
Right.
successful as you in the financial side of things, but I've helped a lot of people in a lot of ways. And I find problem solving to be kind of a natural gift, I guess. Do you find that the problems that you're faced with these companies, large companies, small companies, do you find common threads to these problems? I mean, I know it's a really big, giant, broad question that covers a lot of ground, but you're a visionary, and a lot of times you might see patterns in big things. I was wondering, is there something that keeps coming up in all these problems that you run into?
Yes, there is. You can tell by the smile on my
I
face. You
can,
hit
absolutely,
you
yeah.
you hit a button, right? You hit a
Yeah.
you hit a passion of mine. So let me go back about 7.5, 8 years ago.
Okay.
I started realizing that in the consulting world, that a lot of the companies that I went in to help them put systems in place, let's say management operating systems or solving deep problems that other people couldn't solve, and we followed the
Mhm.
data to let the data paint a picture as to what was causing the problem. In many cases, Joe, the improvements that I was privileged to put in place didn't stick.
Ah,
Or let's say I quoted the client or the company, the consulting company I was working with, quoted the client in 26 to 30 weeks, we can solve this problem for you. What I found is there was something broken in the organization, and I'm gonna get to that. But there was
okay.
something underlying that was broken in their organization that kept them from executing in a timely fashion,
Ah,
and their costs skyrocketed. And here's what I uncovered. And it ties into a book, and Scott actually hits on this in several places in his book, Wake Up to Die Again,
uh-huh.
which I have finished, by the way, and is
All right.
fabulous. This is not a hat tip
A few chapters
to
behind you,
Scott,
but
but
definitely it's a good book.
yeah, yeah, no worries. So here's what I found, that when trust is broken in an organization, execution is lengthened and cost increases. And that concept is echoed in a book by Stephen M. Covey, the grandson of Franklin Covey, that wrote Seven Habits of Highly Effective
Oh
People.
yeah, absolutely.
Stephen M., the grandson, Covey, wrote the book Speed of Trust.
Oh, I have
And
to check
that
it out.
was finally a book that echoed what my soul was feeling in these organizations, that we would go in and execute or try to execute improvement. And I like to use the term, they couldn't drink from the fire hose that we were giving them,
Wow.
because the trust is so broken in the organization that there are so many circumventing systems, so many bureaucracy systems to, because trust is broken, to follow up with the associates, and the associates didn't trust the leadership, that when we came in to help them as pilgrims, if you will,
Right.
as opposed to experts,
Yeah.
pilgrims meaning we walked on a journey with them as opposed
Uh-huh.
to tell them how they're broken and then exit, right? So we're walking the journey, but they didn't trust me, largely because they didn't trust their own leadership.
Wow.
So I learned very quickly, Joe, how to overcome that objection, if you will, and build relationships fast, connect with people, so that those barriers or walls of trust were brought down to the point where I could enter in the influence that would help them rebuild their trust in their organization or trust in me to help them.
Well, that's
Now,
powerful. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that? Because that
right,
seems like it could translate to just about anything in life.
it can. So here's what I know. Trust is an invisible force that undergirds all relationships.
Agreed.
So would you agree? And I've asked this question to a lot of people, and I'll pose it to you, Joe. Would you agree that without trust, there can be no relationship,
100%.
right? So when I'm connecting with someone, be it helping them solve problems or trying to understand what keeps them up at night or what gives them heartburn, those are things that I like to ask people. Hey, what keeps you up at night?
All right.
What gives you heartburn? And when they share that and I'm present with them and I'm listening, right, and I'm understanding, I'm realizing that, hey, I'm building influence with them. I'm connecting with them. And that's the beginning step of raising the level of trust between the two of us.
Okay.
So I do that now with everyone I meet. I try to be present. I try to, what's the term I want to say? Seek first to understand before being understood.
And there you go. Sounds like a familiar little prayer.
Right. Right. And so that begins to resonate with people.
Yeah.
And that they start dropping their barriers to then allow me to probe a little deeper, coach from within, and ask them. Most people know what the solution to their problem is. They need a pilgrim to walk with them and journey with them to say, let's bring that out, right? So
So what you get, you start off at a place where you walk in to a situation, you meet with the people that you're trying to work with. The leadership is likely not present at that time because, or maybe they are, I don't know. The people that you're trying to interface with have a reticence to talk to you because of where you came from. They don't know you. This guy that they don't trust brought you in, so they think you're in cahoots or whatever, for whatever reason that keeps them from. What is the thing how do you deliver it in a way that the wall just kind of drops and they go, well, that first move, what is that? What's that play?
4-letter word, Joe,
All right.
and it has a heart shaped around it.
All right.
And it's universal across every culture. And I've worked in many countries, and it's true. It's LOVE.
Nice.
All right. So I'm gonna tell you why I say that.
Okay.
So we started out talking about trust. Okay,
All
but
right.
you have to do something to gain that trust.
Yeah.
Right. And that's connecting and building a relationship where you earn the right to be entrusted with their trust, if you
Right.
will. Okay.
Gotta start
So
somewhere. Yeah.
so here's what I mean by love. Love equals a choice of your and my will
Okay.
to serve and sacrifice for those we're privileged to influence.
All right.
So what I do very simply is when I go into an organization is I seek out who are the needy
Mm-hmm.
and who are the influential people that can move the needle in their organization, and I just love on them. I
All
find
right.
ways to serve and sacrifice for them so that they realize that I'm for, if you want to say hashtag for whoever, right? They
Yeah.
start getting that real early that Rob is hashtag for them.
Okay.
And that immediately starts breaking down barriers because it's the old adage, I don't care how much you know
Yeah.
until I know how much you care.
I love it.
Right.
I love it.
So I tell people, and I told a group, maybe we'll get into that conversation if it goes there today. If not, we'll have a follow-up.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yes.
I suspect we'll be at this a few times.
Okay. Well, that's fine. So I spoke with a group of leaders today in British Columbia. I'm not going to name the client.
Sure.
Right. They're in the aerospace industry
All right.
and they're broken. And I had to tell them today that their trust is broken in their organization.
Okay.
But they invited me to tell them. So it was amenable, right? And they were all ears.
Okay.
So I had the opportunity to tell them about Rob's definition of love. It's a choice of our will to serve and sacrifice for those we're privileged to influence, and how that begins to build that rapport with the people. And so they said, yeah, we've seen that. I said, that's why I spend 80 to 90% of my time on the floor with your frontline associates that add value to your customer.
Okay.
They are the ones that change the form, fit, and function of the part to delight the customer's need. They're the people adding value from the perspective of the customer. So I'm going to add value to them. So I told them today, just hang an imaginary 10 over the forehead of everybody you meet. Now, here's what I mean by that. If you have a scale of 0 to 10, and we've all done this,
Sure.
we say, oh, she's a 10, or he's a
Right.
10, or that's a 10. Right? That's what I mean by that.
All right.
My daughter has a phrase, 10 out of 10 would agree, right? So I just hang that imaginary 10 over their forehead so that I have maximum value for them, so that I give maximum value to them.
Nice.
If I valued them as a 1 or 2, do you think I'm going to give them my all?
Yeah.
No. But if in my mind I can make the choice, I've already made that, I'm going to serve and I'm going to sacrifice for these people or this person. And I already hang an imaginary 10 on their forehead. Now it pulls it out of me. Now my purpose is alive. It's living. I'm elevating others. You can see in my backdrop
I do. Yeah.
behind me, right? That is my purpose statements, 2 words: elevate others.
Hi, this is Joe Grumbine, and I wanted to share an update. The platform that hosts this podcast has made some changes to the subscriber settings, and we have a number of subscriber-only episodes that we offer to the supporters, and for a minimum of $3 a month, we can get you signed up. And if you're already signed up and you're having some kind of trouble locating these episodes in the other platforms, I would say maybe the best answer is to unsubscribe and then resubscribe. I'm sorry for the hassle. I don't have any way to make a change, but I'm very grateful for all the support. Thank you.
Wow. It sounds like a little love your neighbor as yourself. I like it.
It absolutely is. Yeah.
So when you are dealing with the leadership, it seems inevitable that you have to lay down a truth to them that maybe they don't want to hear, or maybe they do. How do you find that they generally respond when you tell them, we got a breakdown of trust? Your people don't trust you. I mean, that's got to be difficult for a leader of a company to handle, to believe, to accept, because they built this company oftentimes from nothing, and at one point there was trust, and then at one point there wasn't, and maybe they weren't aware of it, maybe they were aware of it and they brought you in to solve it, but how do they normally respond, if there's a normally at all?
Well, there's a couple things that I do. So let me start with the people first, right? Because that's what matters. And then I'll go to the numbers. So I'll get geeky with you in a minute and tell you
Yeah.
my numbers answer, but let me start with the people answer. Right?
Okay.
So one of my traditional habits, Joe, is when we have these sessions periodically with the leadership to tell them the story about the journey.
Okay.
So they want to know, how are we doing, right? How are we
Right.
moving the needle? What are you doing for us, right?
Sure.
So I look for opportunities where I can find the key floor individuals that I'm working with, and I put them on the platform in front of their leadership and let them tell the story.
Okay.
So here's why. My dad once taught me this. He said, son, if you win the children, you will win the parents.
Nice.
All right. So, and he's right. He was a pastor for 50 years.
Learned a thing or two.
He learned a thing or two, a recovering alcoholic. So he lived on the other side, if you will.
Sure.
And so he wanted to really help people have a better purpose and a better life. So I said all that to say, he knew that if he wanted to get more people to hear the truth, if he could win the children would bring the parents.
Okay.
That was his premise. So I've bent that a little bit in the workplace, in that if you're the top dog or you're the boss, nobody likes better than to hear that their peeps or their people are doing good, and you're bragging on them and you're building them up to their leader. They
Sure.
eat that up.
All right.
So I don't have to tell the story about me. The
Right.
people tell the story, right?
Okay.
So
I like
that's why I start early building relationships with those people on the floor and those key influencers and win their hearts, because I know they're going to win the client leadership heart, because I'm going to give them the opportunity to tell the story.
I like
Okay?
that. I've always evaluated people by their children. When I see a bright, well-behaved child, I go, wow, your parents are something special. And
Exactly.
it doesn't always mean a problem child has bad parents, but a good child generally has good parents.
I would agree. I would
Yeah.
agree, Joe. I've seen
So
that in my life.
in all the years that you've been doing this, I'm sure that you have dozens and dozens of stories of transformations, but is there a story that really sticks out to you as where there was just this mess and you walked in and you were able to jiggle a few wires? And it's funny, there's the old story about the guy who got called in to fix the ship, and this gigantic engine wasn't working, and the captain's like, you got to get my ship going. I can't get going. The guy goes over there and he listens to it and it taps on this thing, turns a screw, and the thing starts working. And the captain's, oh, you got my ship working. That's wonderful. He goes, yeah, that'll be $10,000. He's like, wait a minute. You just spent 2 minutes in here. He goes, yeah, I spent 40 years learning where to listen and how to turn. I suspect you have some similar tricks up your sleeve. So I'd like to hear a story about a big mess that you came in and wiggled a few wires and how it all shook out.
Sure. So I was living in Maryland on what they call the Eastern Shore.
Okay.
It's a peninsula of Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia. They call it the Delmarva Peninsula by marrying Delaware, Maryland, Virginia,
Okay.
that sticks down between the Chesapeake Bay and the Atlantic Ocean.
All right.
So I lived there for 25 years and worked for a circuit breaker manufacturer on the peninsula in Maryland.
Sounds like a
Stuck
beautiful
between,
place.
it is, blue claw crab and oysters and rockfish. Yes, it was a fishing community. So I worked with that company for 25 years and I helped transfer. I'm not proud of this, but I did. My job required me to transfer operations to China and Mexico.
Okay.
Over the course of 15 years, we went from 3,600 people to 60.
Whoa.
And I was one of the last 60.
Okay.
So I decided, you know what? I've ridden this wave to the beach about as far as I'm going to ride it. I need to exit. So I put my finger down at Nashville, Tennessee, because it's a conservative state. It's a beautiful state in my mind.
Hmm.
It was very close to my mother-in-law and close to my family compared to where we lived in Maryland. They live in Ohio and Kentucky. So we put our finger down at Nashville and drew a 150-mile radius. And I
Okay.
canvassed every job I could find in that 150-mile radius. Well, on the very western edge of that, in central Tennessee, I found an aluminum manufacturer that needed a specialist subject matter expert such as me to come in and solve problems and save money. So they
Okay.
make aluminum and they roll aluminum into foil and transformer windings and lots of different applications of aluminum foil.
All right.
So they hired me as their master black belt, and they expected me personally to save at least $1 million a year. And all the people that worked with me that I was responsible for were supposed to save $1 million a year.
Wow.
So there was a lot of pressure
I was going to say, but
on
no
me at the time.
pressure.
Right? So about 2.5 years into that 5-year journey with that company, I was washing out. When I say washing out, I was not getting the results that I expected and I thought the client expected.
Okay.
All the while, and I didn't realize it then, but that organization, guess what? Trust was broken, right? And there were hidden things because of that trust that was broken that weren't revealed to me when they hired me, that they had people doing exactly what I was hired to do previously, and they fired them or put them back in their positions, and then they hired me for more money.
Oh, geez.
So there was some animosity that I didn't know was living under the surface, right? It took a while to come out.
All right.
So I was heartbroken, Joe, when I learned that. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm washing out. I don't know that I'm going to be able to have the influence with this organization that I need to have. I was really scared. I was concerned that I was failing, right?
Okay.
So I remember walking around the outside of the East rolling mill. They had an East and a West rolling mill.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a sign there that's basically said, people are our purpose, right? That was a mantra that the company had. They
Okay.
said it, but they didn't live it. Okay.
I was
That's
going to say, it doesn't sound like that was the case.
That wasn't right. But here's something that resonated me, and I won't say it was an audible voice, but I can show you an X on the ground right now where that sign is, where I had this blinding glimpse of insight. And here was the premise. Rob, stop worrying so much about the results and just love the people.
Oh,
Remember my definition? Love
yeah.
is a choice of my will to serve and sacrifice for those I'm privileged to influence. Stop worrying about you getting the results, because that focus is all on you.
Yeah.
And start focusing on serving, which I was, but it was a mental thing that you talk about, Joe, mind,
Yeah.
body, and spirit.
Get it.
Mentally, I was out of alignment with my own identity. I was worried about getting the results, worried about the savings. It was almost a obsession at that point. Just love the
Well, and
people, and the people
to
will.
cut you off there, but that is fundamental to so many things. If you're shooting, if you're golfing, if you're pitching, if you're whatever it is, if you're trying to project one thing from one place to the other, you have to look at the place you're trying to go to. And yet you have to kind of let that go in what you're doing and instead focus just on what's making it work and let go of that looking at that goal. It seems counterproductive almost, but you
Well,
got
it
that
was.
you got that message that said go this way.
So the very thing you said, Joe, is what happened is the very thing I obsessed over and wanted so badly fleeted. It eluded me.
Right.
But by focusing on the people and serving them, they actually helped me get the results that I longed for. It's
Nice.
it's almost like I'm telling you, a light switch went off when that blinding glimpse of insight. So here's where I've taken that now. That was pre-consulting 12
Okay.
years ago. That was about 14 or 15 years ago. I learned that lesson. So when I went into consulting, that's what taught me just love the people from the start. Just build the
Okay.
relationships. Just forget about now, hear me out. I'm not negating the power. You have to run a business. You have to get
Sure.
results.
Absolutely.
But it's the mental focus of what's your course knob and what's your fine knob. I was choosing the wrong course knob. I should have been turning the knob of loving and serving the people. And you know what? They'll help you get the results you're looking for. So here's what happened. I said, Rob, how can you just come in every day and add value to this aluminum company?
Right.
Forget about I got to save $1 million. How do you just come in every day and look for someone you can add value to?
Okay.
So I started emphasizing that imaginary 10 in everybody's forehead. I started building more intentional relationships with people, deeper connection. So I found a project in that company that no one else would touch. Essentially, when they roll aluminum, there are tons of pressure between giant steel chrome plated rolls that
Okay.
squeeze the aluminum down to half its thickness and doubles the length.
All right.
Well, that aluminum has to flow through those rolls on a kerosene-based fatty acid, an animal
Okay.
acid, suspended in kerosene.
All right.
So actually, the
Like a
rolls never,
lubricant?
yes, a lubricant. The rolls never touch the dry aluminum. The rolls are touching the lubricant on the aluminum, if you
Okay.
will. Well, that fatty acid is a Department of Transportation hazardous material.
Of course it is.
It's flammable, and it has solids that are fat that's basically animal fat, so it's very flammable.
Okay.
So the employees would have to go out and suit up, certain employees suit up in this hazmat suit with face shield, hot Tyvek suit, gloves, and take a giant stainless steel tanker that you would transport milk or other kosher products in, and
Okay.
they'd have to dispense that into a stainless steel container.
All right.
Well, it would splash, inevitably the hose, almost like a gasoline pump. It
Right.
would slip out of their hands, it would splash. They hated it.
Okay.
So I said, "Hey, Rob, how about you go suit up with them every time a tanker comes in, and you just you walk a mile in their shoes and
Yeah,
figure
yeah.
out what's hurting them, right? What's giving them heartburn, right?"
Sure. Absolutely.
So that's what I did. I said, every time a tanker comes in, you call me ahead of time, let me know, and I'm going to suit up with you.
All right.
So I would just watch. I would stand back in what I call the circle, or I would get on the platform and actually say, let me try that. And I would
Yeah, yeah.
work with them side by side, the pilgrim concept, the journey with them. Well, guess what? They realized by me doing that Rob cares about us. I
Yeah.
don't care how much you know till I know how much you care.
Yeah, yeah.
So they began feeling that, not just hearing it from my lips. They saw it, they felt it in that connection, because I was willing to get in their shoes and walk a mile with them, next to them. And so guess what? We solved that problem that no one else even wanted to touch. And it was a pretty simple solution. We ended up just buying it in the 550-liter stainless totes instead of a giant
Instead of a big
tanker.
old truck. Yeah.
Exactly.
Pull
Problem
the
solved.
valve and there you go. Just put it where it needs to go.
Exactly. Exactly. So guess what happened, Joe? The word spread that, hey, if nobody will help you with something, call Rob, he'll help you.
Ah, interesting.
So then they started sending me all over. They had a mine in Jamaica where the bauxite is mined that turns into alumina crystals.
Okay.
Then they sent me to the smelter where they melt those alumina crystals into molten prime aluminum. And then they sent me to all the rolling mills. They sent me to Gramercy, Illinois or Louisiana, where they precipitated the alumina crystals out of the bauxite. And I solved problems all over the world, literally, for that organization because I cared. Simply that.
And you basically did it the same way. You jumped into where the problem was and went with the people observing and looking for ways to solve it. They embraced you because you were down in there in the trenches with them. It's interesting. Many years ago, I was a commercial and industrial painter, and I was the white guy that worked with a whole lot of Mexicans that didn't speak a lot of English. But I took the effort to learn enough Spanish that I would communicate with them, and I would always take the hardest thing to do and do it. And whatever it was,
Yeah.
if there was a spot way up in the corner of the rafters that had to be cleaned and scraped, I would go up there and do the hardest thing. And I never had a problem with anybody listening to me because whatever it was, they never had to do the hardest thing. I would always do it. And and in fact, sometimes they would even actually offer to do the hardest thing so that I wouldn't have to after a
You
while.
wouldn't have to. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
But it's
So you know what? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I was gonna say just being in the trenches, I always thought was the best way to connect. And it translates into leadership, but really it's about teamwork. It's about making something happen that you need to happen. and you got a bunch of people that initially didn't trust me. I was the one white guy that, you know, read all the blueprints and told everybody what to do. So initially everybody was like, well, you know, that guy's a problem, until they work with me. And then all of a sudden it wasn't a problem anymore. We had a good team.
Well, good. It was, so you've lived exactly the message that it's pretty simple, Joe. It's not
Yeah.
easy. It's not
No,
easy, but it's simple. It's not a complex concept.
I tell people all the time, the answers to life are so simple. They're nothing to do with easy, but they are so simple. And you know, it's funny. This show oftentimes turns into a little twist of prayer, but you know, at the end of the day, no matter what your concept of a higher power is, it generally has to do with love. And it all boils down to that. Just be loving. That was my one rule of my family, was be loving. And if you weren't being loving, then we probably had a problem. But it always boiled down to that. Like, just be loving. And it's like, oh yeah, how simple. Yeah, it's simple. Hardest thing in
It
the
sure is.
world to do sometimes, but it's simple as heck.
It is. So can I tell you a little bit about my most recent journey?
Please.
Here's one of my favorite quotes. Boldness is best expressed through the tempered flames of brokenness. Let me repeat that for your audience. So boldness is best expressed through the tempered flames of brokenness.
I know
Now,
exactly what you mean.
here's what I know. Pain plus clarity equals conviction.
Agreed.
Hence, that's what I mean by the word boldness, right?
Yeah.
So I have felt enough pain, including that blinding glimpse of insight that, hey, Rob, you need to change your perspective from getting results to loving the people.
Right.
And I've stumbled enough times that I've had some pain financially, pain physically, almost
Sure.
died with COVID, right? A lot of
Yeah.
things that we can talk about in another
Yeah.
podcast. But that understanding and clarity of where's my purpose, how am I focusing it, right? And it's all around maximizing trust and elevating others. In January, I launched a new business called Meridian Transformation Coaching.
Wow.
And it's an expansion to away from technical continuous improvement to human-centered continuous improvement,
Wow.
where I'm focusing with executives and leaders on helping them, coaching them through these principles to maximize trust and maximize influence.
It almost seems like this new business is going to do more of the things that the old business did, but better.
Well, it can be. So you asked me, now I'm gonna go back to a question you asked me earlier, and I said
All
I'm
right.
gonna start with the human side, and then I'll
Sure.
get the geeky
Yeah,
number
yeah, yeah.
side. So leadership always wants to see a picture. What does the data tell you?
Right.
Right. So I have come up with a way to put a number to trust.
Okay.
All right. So remember when I opened up early, I said trust is the invisible force that undergirds relationships.
Right.
I haven't found someone yet that does coaching or the continuous improvement world that I've come out of that's been able to put a number to trust. Well,
Yeah.
I've
I've
done
never
that
heard of
with,
that either. Yeah.
so I've created a tool I call the trusted assessment.
Okay.
And it's a series of 35 categories, over 175 questions I can ask anyone in the organization. And based on their scoring of a 0 to 5, I can put a Likert score to each of those questions, and I can come away with a numeric value in 35 different categories that basically tell me the prowess of the trust and influence in the organization.
Wow.
Okay.
That's it almost sounds like the personality test, where you can kind of learn about the type of category of person you are. It seems like you've distilled that into the trust world.
So I've distilled that to a pyramid that builds those 35 blocks, those building blocks, if you will.
Okay.
And they are things like influence and vision and the operating system inside the organization, and several different things that basically lead to how well does the leadership influence their people and cast vision that the people will believe in? How do they bolster belief in the organization over those 175 questions? And I can come away with a red, green, yellow conditionally formatted pyramid that will show the organization not only a 0 to 100 scale, 100 meaning maximum trust, 0 meaning minimum, and everything in between. I not only show them that, but I can show them in 35 different categories where their individual scores are with those particular areas. And then what I do with that is I say, now that you know that trust is broken, let's go down that path.
Okay.
Trust is very bad in your organization or minimal, right? That means your execution time is going to be lengthened and your costs are going to go up. And here's why. And I give them evidence from case studies.
Sure.
And there are a lot out there, and I've done the research.
Yeah.
So then I've put very conservative numbers to say you can expect something like a 15 to 20% increase in throughput by improving your front line and your middle manager's leadership prowess. You can see a 20 to 25% boost in quality. You can see an 18 to 32% increase in cost reduction in your organization. And all of a sudden that starts waking up the leadership to start putting dollar signs around a number that I've applied to their trust in the organization. Now I have their interest because I've just married trust with their business bottom
Yeah.
line.
It makes
Okay.
sense, though. It makes perfect sense.
So then I'd say, okay, do I have your interest? Yes or no? And they
I
usually
would
say
imagine
yes.
everybody says
Okay.
yes. Yeah.
Right. Because you're talking dollars, right?
Yeah.
Business. I don't care what you make, you really make money, right?
Right.
But you're exploiting gifts in the service of others to make a profit to help people have a gainful employment. So then I say, okay, now let me help you create a journey where we'll walk together. I'm the pilgrim again, right? I'm going to walk with you.
Right.
So let's take your key leaders and let's give them what's called a blind spot assessment. Right? So that blind spot assessment is like a DISC personality profile for leaders, and there are 8 different types,
Mm-hmm.
but it helps each type realize what their natural blind spot is that they're overlooking
Okay.
in their leadership style. So it's not just here's how you're compatible as a connector with a problem solver type personality. I'm now saying here's your likely blind spots that you're overlooking in your leadership. And from that blind spot assessment, I've created custom roadmaps for each of those 8 that customize the guidance of those leaders through what they need to bolster their blind spot.
Wow. You know, I suspected this was going to happen. We're going to run low on time before we run anywhere near out of topic. And I definitely want to pursue some of this stuff a whole lot more.
Sure.
I really like your approach. I've got a million things that I would want to share, but we're really kind of tripping over the finish line here.
Sure.
I have 2 questions still. One, with this new business, you're one person, and the general progression of most service type businesses is some kind of growth. What's your plan in the future?
So I have offered to partner with the existing consulting firm that I'm with,
Okay.
and I'd rather not reveal that at this
Sure.
particular one, but in a future podcast.
Yeah.
But I'm still working with a continuous improvement consulting firm.
Okay.
But they have bought into the Meridian Transformation coaching journey,
Nice.
and I'm planning to partner with them to create a whole new work stream
Nice.
for human-centered continuous improvement. So imagine we not only now go in to do technical problem solving in manufacturing and lean manufacturing, Six Sigma continuous improvement concepts, but
Right.
we also now offer this human-centered leadership and executive leadership development, which makes the improvements sustainable and undergirds the improvements with better leadership, raising the trust in the organization, maximizing influence. So my first approach is, hey, don't try to do this solo. Join with someone that already has success in the consulting world that wants to morph their business to add this human-centered continuous improvement methodology. And so we're partnering to do that.
Oh, that's fantastic. That seems a whole lot easier than starting from scratch training people. I love it. I love it. Well, I like the way you think. We have a lot in common. And again, I think we've barely scratched the surface, which I kind of figured was going to be the case. I always like to sort of wrap an interview with you. Do you have a parting thought for our listeners? You've said so many powerful things that, like, well, he's already given us all these wonderful, you know, bits of wisdom, but is there one thought you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Well, I would have to come back to something we started with, Joe, at this point. And in a future podcast, maybe I can expound on this a little more with some other
Sure.
fingers. But it really comes down to, I don't care if it's a child, a sibling, a friend, a coworker, a boss, the president of the United States, or the janitor. Okay.
Hmm.
There can be no relationship without trust. And
Right.
I am convinced that trust is the force that's sometimes intangible, but it manifests itself in the expression of influence that we have over other individuals to take a journey with us. So my encouragement to your listeners would be, do everything you can to get rid of anything in your life that robs that trust with others, and bolster the positive things that reinforce trust with others, because there can be no relationship without trust.
I love that. And I never have put it together the way you explained it. Although in the last couple of years, I literally re rebuilt my whole relationship world. You know, when you get diagnosed with cancer, all of a sudden everything changes and all your priorities change. And I got this giant wake up call, and I got rid of 95% of the relationships in my life because they were toxic or not serving me. And I don't mean that in a selfish way. I just mean that in a way that was real, you know. And I came to a place where I had to live in a world of truth, and otherwise I was going to die. And so all of a sudden you start getting really honest about relationships, and you realize
Wow.
many of them weren't what they appeared to be. And I didn't terminate them so much as I put them on the side and created a place for new ones to come in take their place. And they did, in a beautiful way. And after talking to you and listening about this idea of trust and love, I've always considered love and trust to be very closely tied together, but I never really looked at the importance of trust in these relationships as really what it is. And it's paramount. And I think that's the key to all these relationships that I have today that I didn't have before, is that they're built on trust, straight up. And
Absolutely.
that's a powerful lesson. I'm gonna spend some time sitting with that for a bit. I appreciate this. Well, Rob, like I said, we have so much more to talk about. I look
It-
forward to continuing this. I want to finish Scott's book and have another conversation with you and see where we want to jump into. But I'm really impressed, and I deeply respect the work that you're doing. I think you, in so many ways, make the world a better place. So, and I don't say that to very many people. I'm
Honored. Thank you.
not a big compliment giver. So I, 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 I'm very impressed with what you do. And, I don't care so much about the companies, but if you can help a person to better themselves, it spreads and you're making the world better.
It sure does. Thank you so much, Joe. It's been an honor and a privilege to talk with you in this conversation, right? It wasn't a bunch of noise or talk, right? It was a
Oh,
conversation.
no,
Thank
we
you.
got deep. I love it. I love it. This is fantastic. And like I said, I I got a million other little doors that, you know, we have a lot in common. Let's just say that. And I very seldom meet a person that I feel like we have some real fundamental things in common. And so I
Same
like to
here.
explore that. So, well, Rob, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. A half an hour turned into almost an hour, and it makes me happy that it did. So I just want to thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you, Joe. My privilege. I look forward to our next session together.
Excellent. Well, this has been another episode of the Healthy Living Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Grumbine, and I really want to thank our listeners for making this show possible, and we will see you next time.
This has been another episode of the Healthy Living Podcast. We produce this show so that people can share their stories, people that have overcome obstacles, people that are undergoing obstacles. We're building a community of health-minded individuals. If you're interested in supporting the show, please leave a review on the platform you're listening to it on. If you're interested in becoming a guest, please send an email to itsjoegrumbine@gmail.com, or you can send a note into the notes section of the podcast. All right. Well, thank you for supporting this show, and we hope you've enjoyed it.